What if everything you've been taught about human history is just the visible tip of an impossibly deep iceberg? What if beneath the carefully catalogued artifacts in our museums, beneath the neatly organized timelines in our textbooks, there exists evidence so disturbing, so fundamentally challenging to our understanding of the past, that mainstream archaeology would rather ignore it than confront its implications? Tonight, we're going to shatter those comfortable assumptions. We're diving into 15 archaeological mysteries so profound, so inexplicable, that they've left the world's most brilliant scientists speechless. These aren't your typical unsolved mysteries. These are discoveries that shouldn't exist, technologies that predate their inventors by hundreds of thousands of years, and civilizations that vanished so completely it's as if they were erased from reality itself. Picture this: deep beneath the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, whispers persist of military bases conducting research so classified that even mentioning their existence could land you on a government watch list. In the remote mountains of Russia, scientists have uncovered metallic nanostructures manufactured with precision that would challenge our best engineers today. Except these objects are 300,000 years old, created when our ancestors were supposedly still learning to control fire. And in the heart of America's Midwest, an entire metropolis larger than medieval London simply ceased to exist overnight, its 40,000 inhabitants vanishing without leaving a single clue as to where they went or why they left. These aren't conspiracy theories cooked up in someone's basement. These are documented discoveries published in peer-reviewed journals, examined by respected institutions, and yet they remain stubbornly unexplained. Each one represents a crack in the foundation of our historical narrative, a whisper from the past that suggests our ancestors knew things we've forgotten, possessed capabilities we've lost, or perhaps weren't entirely alone on this planet. Consider the implications of what we're about to explore. If even one of these mysteries proves to be what it appears to be, it means rewriting everything. It means admitting that human civilization might be far older than we thought, that advanced technology might have risen and fallen multiple times throughout Earth's history, or that influences from outside our understanding of normal reality have shaped our development in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. The most unsettling part: these discoveries keep happening. Every year, archaeologists unearth something that doesn't fit, something that challenges the timeline, something that suggests the story of humanity is far stranger and more complex than we ever imagined. And yet, how many of these discoveries make it into mainstream discussion? How many are quietly filed away, dismissed as anomalies, or explained away with increasingly strained theories that preserve the status quo? Tonight, we're not accepting those easy explanations. We're going to examine each of these mysteries with fresh eyes, considering all possibilities, no matter how uncomfortable they might make us. From civilizations that achieve the impossible, to technologies that shouldn't exist, from creatures that defy explanation, to knowledge that seems to have appeared from nowhere, we're going to confront the evidence that suggests our past is far more mysterious than our future. But here's what makes these particular discoveries so chilling: they're connected. Not obviously, not directly, but through subtle patterns that only become visible when you look at them together. Civilizations separated by oceans and millennia that suddenly abandon their cities at the peak of their power. Technologies that appear impossibly advanced, found in locations where they have no business being. Stories of great floods and catastrophes that appear in every culture on Earth, told with such similar details that coincidence seems impossible. As we journey through these 15 mysteries, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about human history. You might find yourself wondering if we're the first advanced civilization on this planet, or merely the latest in a long cycle of rise and fall. You might even find yourself looking at the world around you differently, wondering what secrets lie buried beneath your feet, what knowledge was lost when the last keeper of ancient wisdom drew their final breath. These aren't just stories from the past. They're warnings, perhaps, or messages, or pieces of a puzzle so vast we can barely comprehend its edges. Each discovery we're about to explore represents thousands of hours of research, countless expeditions into dangerous and remote locations, and the dedicated work of scientists who risked their reputations to bring these anomalies to light. So before we begin this journey into the impossible, take a moment to prepare yourself. What you're about to hear challenges not just historical facts, but our entire understanding of human capability, technological development, and our place in the cosmos. These mysteries don't just ask questions. They demand that we reconsider the very nature of reality itself. If you're ready to have your worldview shaken, if you're prepared to confront evidence that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain, then stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because once you hear what we're about to reveal, you'll want to be the first to know when we uncover even more impossible truths hidden in our past. The journey into the unknown begins now. Let's discover the 15 most terrifying archaeological mysteries that science still can't explain. Before we plunge into these specific mysteries, we need to understand the battlefield where science and the impossible collide. Modern archaeology, armed with ground-penetrating radar, carbon dating, DNA analysis, and satellite imaging, has revolutionized our ability to peer into the past. We can now detect buried cities from space, extract genetic information from bones millennia old, and date artifacts with unprecedented precision. And yet, paradoxically, the more advanced our tools become, the more mysteries we uncover that these very tools cannot explain. The foundation of archaeological dating rests on several key assumptions. We assume that radioactive decay rates have remained constant throughout Earth's history. We assume that geological layers were deposited uniformly and predictably. We assume that technological development follows a linear progression from simple to complex. But what happens when we discover an artifact that violates all these assumptions? What happens when we find precision-engineered objects in strata that predate the supposed invention of the wheel? What happens when civilizations we thought were primitive display knowledge that surpasses our own? This is where orthodox archaeology faces its greatest challenge. The academic establishment, built on centuries of carefully constructed theories, often responds to anomalous discoveries with what can only be described as willful blindness. Artifacts that don't fit the narrative are labeled as hoaxes, misidentified, or simply ignored. Researchers who pursue these mysteries too vigorously find their funding cut, their papers rejected, their careers derailed. The term forbidden archaeology exists for a reason, and it's not because these discoveries lack evidence, but because they possess too much evidence of the wrong kind. Consider the curious case of geological catastrophism. For decades, mainstream science insisted that all geological changes occurred gradually over millions of years. Then we discovered evidence of massive asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and climate shifts so rapid they wiped out entire ecosystems in geological blinks of an eye. Suddenly, the catastrophic events described in ancient texts didn't seem so mythological. The great floods, the fire from the sky the day the sun stood still, these weren't primitive fantasies, but possibly eyewitness accounts of real events that shaped human history. This brings us to one of the most unsettling patterns in archaeology, the phenomenon of simultaneous cultural development. How did civilizations separated by vast oceans independently develop similar architectural techniques, astronomical knowledge, and spiritual beliefs? The pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, and China share mathematical principles that supposedly weren't discovered until thousands of years after their construction. Calendar systems from opposite sides of the globe track celestial cycles with identical precision. Flood myths, as we mentioned, appear in every culture, with eerily similar details, a warning from the divine, a chosen survivor, a vessel of salvation, and a promise never to destroy the world by water again. Traditional archaeology explains these similarities through parallel evolution, the idea that humans naturally develop similar solutions to similar problems. But this explanation grows increasingly strained when we examine the specifics. Why would cultures with no contact independently decide that the Pleiades constellation was 7 sisters? Why would they all describe ancient teachers who came from the sea to share knowledge? Why would they all encode the same mathematical constants in their monuments? Then there's the problem of technological discontinuity. We find batteries in ancient Baghdad, precision-drilled granite in Egypt, and descriptions of flying machines in Sanskrit texts. These aren't incremental improvements on existing technology. They're quantum leaps that appear and disappear without precedent or progression. It's as if someone briefly opened a door to advanced knowledge, then slammed it shut, leaving only tantalizing fragments behind. The dating of these anomalies presents another layer of complexity. When we find a metal sphere in South Africa, dated to 3 billion years ago, when we discover a spark plug embedded in rock supposedly 500,000 years old, when we uncover footprints alongside dinosaur tracks, we're forced to confront 2 possibilities. Either our dating methods are fundamentally flawed, or the history of intelligent life on Earth extends far beyond current understanding. This is where alternative researchers propose various theories, each more controversial than the last. Some suggest that human civilization is cyclical, rising to heights of achievement before being reset by catastrophe, forcing survivors to begin again from scratch. Others propose that Earth has hosted multiple intelligent species, each leaving traces that we misinterpret or ignore. Still others argue for external intervention, whether from extraterrestrial visitors or interdimensional travelers, sharing knowledge that primitive humans couldn't fully comprehend or preserve. What makes these theories compelling isn't their sensationalism, but the patterns they explain that orthodox archaeology cannot. The sudden appearance of agriculture worldwide around 10,000 years ago. The explosion of megalithic construction in a narrow window of time. The universal obsession with specific star systems and celestial alignments. The recurring symbols and myths that appear in every culture, the serpent, the tree of life, the divine twins, the world mountain. We're also confronting the limits of preservation. What survives from the ancient world is primarily stone and occasionally metal. But what if ancient civilizations achieved greatness through organic technology? What if they built with materials designed to biodegrade? What if their greatest achievements were in fields that leave no physical trace? Consciousness, energy manipulation, or dimensional physics? We judge the past by what remains. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Modern physics has taught us that reality is far stranger than our senses perceive. We now know that time isn't constant, that particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, that information might be preserved even in black holes. If our current science reveals such impossibilities, what might ancient civilizations have discovered through different paths of inquiry? What if they developed technologies based on principles we haven't yet discovered or have dismissed as impossible? As we examine each mystery in detail, keep in mind that we're not just looking at isolated anomalies. We're potentially glimpsing fragments of a larger picture, pieces of knowledge that survived catastrophe, remnants of achievements we can barely comprehend. Each discovery might be a thread that, when pulled, unravels our entire understanding of human history and our place in the cosmos. The stage is set, the context is established. Now let's examine the evidence that orthodox archaeology wishes didn't exist, starting with civilizations that vanished so completely. It's as if they were erased from existence itself. Cahokia, the American metropolis that disappeared. Imagine London in the year 1250. Now imagine a city even larger, more organized and more sophisticated, existing at the exact same time in the heart of North America. This wasn't a legend or a myth. This was Cahokia, and its sudden, complete disappearance remains one of archaeology's most haunting mysteries. Located near present-day St. Louis, Cahokia once sprawled across 6 square miles, featuring over 120 earthen mounds, vast public plazas, and a sophisticated urban planning system that would impress modern city designers. At its peak, between 1050 and 1350 CE, This metropolis housed an estimated 40,000 residents, making it larger than London, Paris, or any European city of its time. The central plaza alone could hold 10,000 people for ceremonies and gatherings. The crown jewel of Cahokia was Monk's Mound, a massive earthen pyramid rising 100 feet high and covering 14 acres at its base, larger than the Great Pyramid of Egypt in footprint. This wasn't randomly piled dirt. It was precisely engineered with multiple terraces, drainage systems, and a massive building on top that likely served as the residence of the paramount chief. The amount of earth moved to create this structure, all without wheels or beasts of burden, represents one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. But Cahokia was more than just impressive architecture. Archaeological evidence reveals a complex society with specialized crafts, long-distance trade networks reaching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, and sophisticated astronomical knowledge. They built woodhenges, circular arrangements of wooden posts that tracked celestial movements with stunning accuracy. They created exquisite artifacts from materials sourced thousands of miles away, copper from the Great Lakes shells from the Gulf Coast and mica from the Appalachians. Then, sometime around 1350, everyone left. Not gradually, not partially, but completely and apparently voluntarily. There's no evidence of warfare, no mass graves indicating disease, no signs of environmental catastrophe that would force such an exodus. The inhabitants simply abandoned their metropolis, leaving behind their homes, their monuments, and their entire way of life. When European explorers arrived centuries later, they found only empty mounds covered in forest, with local Native American tribes having no memory of who built them or why they left. Various theories attempt to explain this disappearance. Climate change, specifically the onset of the Little Ice Age, might have disrupted agriculture. Political upheaval or religious transformation could have made the city spiritually uninhabitable. Resource depletion, particularly deforestation, from the constant need for construction timber and firewood might have made the area unsustainable. But none of these explanations fully account for the totality and suddenness of the abandonment. What makes Cahokia's disappearance even more mysterious is that it wasn't unique. Around the same time, similar Mississippian culture cities throughout the American Southeast were also abandoned. It's as if an entire civilization spanning hundreds of miles and dozens of major settlements collectively decided to cease existing in their urban form. Where did 40,000 people go, and why did they never attempt to rebuild their remarkable achievement elsewhere? The Anasazi, masters who vanished into thin air. In the high desert of the American Southwest, carved into sheer cliff faces and hidden in remote canyons, stand the abandoned cities of the Anasazi, a civilization whose very name means ancient enemies in Navajo, though they now prefer to be called the ancestral Puebloans. These weren't primitive dwellings, but sophisticated multi-story apartments, some containing hundreds of rooms, built with such skill that they've survived nearly 1,000 years of weathering. The crown jewel of Anasazi architecture is the Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde, Colorado. This stunning complex features over 150 rooms and 23 kivas, circular ceremonial chambers that connected the physical and spiritual worlds. The precision of construction is breathtaking, perfectly fitted stones, plastered walls, and geometric designs that demonstrate advanced mathematical knowledge. These structures were built in locations so precarious that modern visitors require special equipment to access them safely. But the Anasazi weren't just master builders, they were also sophisticated astronomers and engineers. At Chaco Canyon, they constructed great houses aligned with celestial events, particularly the lunar standstill that occurs every 18.6 years. They built arrow-straight roads extending for hundreds of miles across rough terrain roads that often led to nowhere visible, suggesting purposes beyond mere transportation. They created an extensive communication network using line-of-sight signaling stations that could relay messages across vast distances in minutes. The Anasazi thrived for over 700 years, developing advanced agricultural techniques, creating distinctive pottery and textiles, and maintaining trade networks that brought them tropical birds from Mexico and shells from the Pacific. Their society was complex and stratified, with evidence of specialized roles, elaborate burial customs, and sophisticated water management systems that allowed them to flourish in an environment that challenges survival even today. Then, at the end of the 13th century, they vanished, not just from one location, but from all their major settlements simultaneously. Mesa Verde Chaco Canyon, Canyon de Chelly, and dozens of other sites were abandoned within a generation. The inhabitants took some belongings but left behind priceless pottery tools and even food stores. They sealed certain rooms and kivas deliberately, as if planning to return, but they never did. The mystery deepens when we examine the evidence. Tree ring data shows a severe drought from 1276 to 1299, but the Anasazi had survived worse droughts before. There's evidence of violence at some sites, but not enough to explain a complete evacuation. Some researchers point to religious or social upheaval, noting changes in pottery styles and architectural patterns before the abandonment. Others suggest environmental degradation, overpopulation, or conflict with neighboring tribes. What's most puzzling is the apparent coordination of the exodus. How did thousands of people across hundreds of miles decide to leave simultaneously? Where did they go? Some scholars believe they integrated with Pueblo peoples to the south, but genetic and cultural evidence suggests this was only a partial migration. Many Anasazi simply disappeared from the historical record, taking with them the knowledge of why they left their remarkable cities to crumble in the desert sun. The Paracas people, the elongated skull. Enigma. Along the windswept coast of Peru, the Paracas culture flourished from 800 BCE to 100 BCE, leaving behind some of the most disturbing and controversial archaeological evidence ever discovered. While they created stunning textiles that remain vibrant after 2 millennia and developed advanced surgical techniques, including successful trepanation, it's their elongated skulls that have ignited fierce debate about human history and possibly our very origins. When archaeologist Julio Tello first discovered the Paracas necropolis in 1928, he uncovered something unprecedented: hundreds of skulls with cranial volumes up to 25% larger than normal human skulls and weighing 60% more. These weren't just artificially deformed through head binding, a practice known throughout the ancient world. The Paracas skulls show fundamental structural differences, missing sagittal sutures, different parietal plate configurations, and anomalous foramen placement that suggests these features were genetic, not artificial. Recent DNA analysis has only deepened the mystery. Initial testing by various independent laboratories revealed anomalies in the mitochondrial DNA that don't match any known human primate or animal samples. Some sequences appear completely unique, leading to explosive claims about potential hybrid beings or even non-terrestrial origins. While mainstream science disputes these findings, demanding more rigorous testing, the genetic anomalies remain unexplained. The physical characteristics of these skulls are equally puzzling. Many have reddish or blonde hair, unusual for indigenous South American populations. The eye sockets are larger than normal, and the jaw structure differs from typical human anatomy. Some skulls show evidence of complex brain surgery, with healing patterns indicating the patient survived these procedures, demonstrating medical knowledge that shouldn't have existed in that era. But the Paracas people weren't just anatomical anomalies. They were a sophisticated civilization. They created some of history's finest textiles with thread counts and dye techniques that rival modern production. They practiced complex mummification, preserving bodies in the dry desert climate with techniques different from but equal to Egyptian methods. They built extensive underground aqueduct systems, many still functioning today, demonstrating advanced hydraulic engineering. The culture disappeared around 100 BCE with their distinctive elongated skull trait vanishing from the archaeological record. Later, cultures in the region practiced cranial deformation but never achieved the extreme modifications seen in Paracas remains. It's as if the genetic or cultural knowledge required to produce these features was lost forever. Various theories attempt to explain the Paracas skulls. Mainstream archaeology insists they're the result of intentional cranial deformation combined with natural genetic variations. Alternative researchers propose more radical explanations, a distinct human subspecies survivors from Atlantis or evidence of ancient alien hybridization. Some suggest the Paracas people possessed knowledge of genetic manipulation or represented a bloodline that was deliberately eliminated or diluted over time. What remains undisputed is that the Paracas skulls represent something outside our normal understanding of human development. Whether through artificial means, genetic mutation, or something more extraordinary these people achieved or inherited physical characteristics that challenge our understanding of human capability and variation. Their disappearance took with them secrets about human potential that we may never recover. These three vanished civilizations share disturbing commonalities that transcend geographical and temporal boundaries. Each achieved remarkable technological and social sophistication that challenges our assumptions about ancient capabilities. Each disappeared suddenly and completely, often at the height of their power and prosperity. And perhaps, most unnervingly, each left behind evidence suggesting they possessed knowledge or abilities that we still don't fully understand. The synchronized nature of these disappearances raises profound questions. Were these civilizations responding to some global phenomenon we haven't identified? Did they share knowledge or warnings through networks we haven't discovered, or were they all subject to some recurring cycle of rise and fall that awaits rediscovery? What do you think caused entire civilizations to abandon everything they'd built and simply vanish into history? Part 3, Main Body. Group 2, Impossible Technologies. 2500 to 3 Swan words. Mystery, Chapter 12, The Russian Nanostructures. Technology before humans. In 1991, while prospecting for gold along the remote Narada-Kozhim and Balbanyu rivers in the Ural Mountains, Russian geologists made a discovery that should have been impossible. At depths corresponding to geological layers between 20,000 and 300,000 years old, they found thousands of microscopic metal objects that appeared to be manufactured with a precision that challenges our best modern technology. These weren't natural formations or geological oddities. Under electron microscope examination, these objects revealed themselves to be intricate coils, spirals, and shafts made from copper, tungsten, and molybdenum. The smallest measured just 3/10,000ths of an inch smaller than a human red blood cell. The tungsten spirals in particular showed a regularity and precision that would be difficult to achieve even in today's advanced manufacturing facilities. They resembled nothing so much as microscopic components from some unknown machine. What makes these artifacts truly impossible is their age. Found in undisturbed geological strata, alongside mammoth bones and prehistoric pollen, they predate not just human civilization, but potentially humanity itself. 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had barely emerged in Africa. Fire was still a revolutionary technology. The idea that someone or something was manufacturing precision microscopic components at this time violates everything we understand about technological development. The Russian Academy of Sciences conducted extensive analysis confirming both the age of the surrounding strata and the artificial nature of the objects. The tungsten and molybdenum components particularly puzzled researchers as these metals have melting points exceeding 3,400 and 2,600 degrees Celsius, respectively, temperatures that require sophisticated furnaces to achieve. The spiral structure of many objects showed mathematical ratios that appear intentionally designed rather than naturally occurring. Multiple laboratories confirmed these findings, including facilities in Helsinki and St. Petersburg. The objects showed no signs of being modern contaminants. They were deeply embedded in the geological layers, oxidized in patterns consistent with their supposed age, and distributed across multiple sites, ruling out localized contamination or hoaxing. Yet mainstream science remains largely silent about their implications. Various theories attempt to explain these impossible artifacts. Some suggest they're remnants of a prehistoric civilization that achieved technological sophistication before being wiped out by catastrophe. Others propose they're evidence of time travelers or extraterrestrial visitors who left behind microscopic debris from their technology. A few researchers even suggest they might be natural formations we don't yet understand, though no known geological process can explain their precise manufacturing-like characteristics. The discovery site itself adds another layer of mystery. The Ural Mountains region features numerous anomalies, including areas of unusual radioactivity, magnetic anomalies, and frequent UFO sightings. Local indigenous legends speak of metallic beings and fire from the sky in ancient times. Could these nanostructures be connected to these other phenomena? What's particularly disturbing is that similar microscopic artifacts have been found elsewhere. In California, microscopic tubes and spirals have been discovered in ancient rock formations. In South Africa, metallic spheres with precise grooves have been found in Precambrian rock dated to 2.8 billion years old. Either our dating methods are fundamentally flawed, or technology has existed on Earth far longer than we ever imagined. Mystery 11. The coin from 2039. Evidence of time, travel, or parallel worlds. In 2018, construction worker Diego Aviles was excavating a foundation in Mexico when his shovel struck something metallic. Expecting perhaps an old peso or ancient artifact, he instead uncovered something that shouldn't exist. A coin clearly dated 2039 bearing Nazi imagery and the inscription Nueva Alemania, New Germany. This wasn't some obvious fake or movie prop. The coin showed appropriate wear mineral deposits consistent with burial and metallurgical properties that puzzled experts. The coin's details are what make it truly anomalous. It features a two-headed eagle clutching a swastika surrounded by text in both Spanish and German. The date 2039 is clearly visible, along with what appears to be a denomination. The reverse shows architectural imagery unlike any known building, with geometric patterns that seem both futuristic and oddly organic. The metal composition includes trace elements in ratios that don't match any known minting process. Initial examination by numismatists revealed disturbing details. The striking quality suggested advanced minting technology with micro details that would be difficult to fake even with modern equipment. The wear patterns were consistent with circulation, not artificial aging. Mineral deposits and oxidation matched what would be expected from burial in Mexican soil, but for a much longer period than the few years since 2039 coins could theoretically exist. The historical implications are staggering. Mexico did have a small German immigrant community called Nueva Alemania in the 1800s, but they never minted coins, especially not with Nazi imagery that wouldn't exist for another century. The combination of Nazi symbolism with a future date and Spanish text suggests either an alternate timeline where Germany won World War II and colonized Mexico, or time travel from a future where such a reality exists. Scientific analysis deepened the mystery. Mass spectrometry revealed isotope ratios in the metal that don't match terrestrial sources. X-ray crystallography showed an internal structure suggesting manufacturing techniques we haven't developed. Some researchers claim to detect quantum entanglement signatures in the metal's atomic structure, though this remains highly controversial. The coin's discoverer, Diego Aviles, had no history of hoaxes or unusual claims. Security footage from the construction site confirmed he discovered the coin exactly as claimed. Soil analysis showed the ground hadn't been recently disturbed. Multiple witnesses saw the coin emerge from previously undisturbed earth, yet the impossibility of its existence remains. Theories abound. Time travel enthusiasts claim it's proof that temporal manipulation will be achieved by 2039. Parallel universe. Theorists suggest it somehow crossed from an alternate timeline where history unfolded differently. Skeptics insist it must be an elaborate hoax, though they can't explain the technical sophistication or how it came to be buried in undisturbed soil. Some propose it's a message or warning from the future deliberately sent back to our time. What's particularly unsettling is that this isn't the only temporal anomaly discovered recently. Other coins with future dates have allegedly been found, though none as well documented as the 2039 specimen. Are these glimpses of futures that might be artifacts from parallel timelines, or evidence that our understanding of time itself is fundamentally flawed? Mystery Nurse 10 Medicine Wheel. The observatory that predates astronomy. High in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming, at an elevation of nearly 10,000 feet, lies a massive stone structure that challenges our understanding of ancient North American capabilities. The medicine wheel, constructed at least 5,000 years ago, represents astronomical knowledge that supposedly didn't exist anywhere on Earth at that time, let alone in the hands of nomadic peoples without writing or permanent settlements. The wheel consists of a central cairn, 25 feet in diameter, surrounded by a circle of stones measuring 80 feet across. 28 spokes radiate from the center, a number that precisely matches the lunar month. But this is just the beginning of its mysteries. The wheel's alignments are so exact that they track not just solar events like solstices and equinoxes, but also the heliacal risings of specific stars, including Aldebaran Rigel, and serious calculations that require centuries of observation and mathematical sophistication we didn't think existed in prehistoric North America. What makes the medicine wheel impossible is its precision. The alignments are accurate to within a degree, accounting for precession and stellar drift over millennia. This wasn't trial and error. This was deliberate, calculated placement based on deep astronomical knowledge. The builders understood not just where celestial bodies appeared, but how their positions would shift over thousands of years, encoding this information in stone. Carbon dating of organic materials found within the wheel's structure confirms its minimum age of 5,000 years, making it contemporary with the earliest stages of Stonehenge, but displaying far more sophisticated astronomical knowledge. While Stonehenge tracks basic solar and lunar events, the medicine wheel incorporates stellar observations that European astronomy wouldn't achieve for another 4,000 years. The wheel's location adds another layer of impossibility. Built at extreme altitude in a location that's snow-covered 8 months of the year, accessible only during brief summer windows, it represents enormous effort for peoples who supposedly lived in small mobile bands. Why would nomadic hunters invest such resources in a permanent structure used only briefly each year? The standard archaeological explanation of ceremonial purposes seems woefully inadequate. Recent discoveries have revealed that the Bighorn medicine wheel is part of a vast network. Similar wheels exist throughout the northern plains and Canada, many sharing identical alignments and proportions, despite being separated by thousands of miles. This suggests coordinated knowledge and purpose across distances that supposedly isolated peoples couldn't have maintained. Some wheels are even older, with dates reaching back 10,000 years, predating agriculture and settled civilization. Indigenous oral traditions describe the wheels as teaching devices left by star people who came to Earth to share knowledge. These aren't vague myths, but specific accounts of beings who taught astronomy, mathematics, and spiritual practices. Elders speak of the wheels as communication devices, ways to maintain contact with teachers who departed but promised to return. While mainstream archaeology dismisses these as mythology, the astronomical precision of the wheels suggests the builders had teachers of extraordinary capability. The mathematical constants encoded in the medicine wheel are particularly puzzling. The number of spokes, the ratios of diameters, and the angles of alignment incorporate values like pi and phi with accuracy that random construction couldn't achieve. It's as if the builders were working from blueprints or instructions that contained advanced mathematical knowledge, presented in a way that could be preserved in stone. Mini conclusion for Group 2. These three impossible technologies share a common thread that threatens our entire understanding of human development. Each represents knowledge or capabilities that existed long before they should have been possible. Each suggests either that human civilization is far older than believed, that we've been visited by advanced beings who shared their knowledge, or that technology can develop through paths we haven't discovered. The precision of these artifacts rules out coincidence or primitive trial and error. These were deliberate creations by intelligences that understood principles we're only now rediscovering. Whether microscopic components from before humans existed, coins from futures that shouldn't be, or astronomical observations that predate astronomy itself, they force us to confront the possibility that the history of technology on Earth includes chapters we've completely missed. How do you explain technologies that exist before their inventors were even born? Part 3, Main Body. Group 3, Deadly Environments and Creatures. 2, 500 to 3,000 words. Mystery, number 9. The death pools of the Red Sea, where life shouldn't exist. Beneath the serene blue waters of the Red Sea, at depths where sunlight fades to eternal darkness, scientists have discovered something that defies the laws of nature as we understand them. These are the death pools, vast underwater lakes of ultra-saline water, so toxic that any creature entering them dies instantly. Yet paradoxically, they teem with life that shouldn't exist. Located nearly 6,000 feet below the surface, these brine pools are unlike anything else on Earth. The water within them is 7 times saltier than the ocean above, creating a distinct surface tension that makes them appear as actual lakes on the ocean floor. The density difference is so extreme that submersibles can literally float on top of these underwater lakes, as if they were on the surface of a completely different body of water. But it's not just the salinity that makes them deadly. These pools are completely devoid of oxygen and laden with toxic chemicals, including hydrogen sulfide and methane at concentrations that would kill most life forms in seconds. When researchers first discovered these pools using remote-operated vehicles, they witnessed a horrifying sight. The edges were littered with the preserved corpses of fish eels and crustaceans that had ventured too close. The high salinity and lack of oxygen created perfect preservation conditions, turning the pool boundaries into underwater graveyards. Any creature that swims into the brine immediately goes into toxic shock, their bodies convulsing before sinking into the pool where they're preserved for potentially centuries. Yet here's where science confronts the impossible. These death pools are thriving ecosystems. Along their shores, dense mats of bacteria flourish, feeding on the chemical soup that kills everything else. These aren't just surviving. They're the foundation of entire food chains that exist nowhere else on Earth. Specialized worms, shrimp, and other creatures have evolved to live exclusively at the pool's edges, feeding on the bacterial mats while carefully avoiding the toxic water itself. It's as if life found a way to exploit death itself. What makes these ecosystems truly extraordinary is their implications for the origin of life. The conditions in these pools closely mirror what scientists believe Earth's oceans were like 3.5 billion years ago, oxygen-free, chemical-rich, and hostile to modern life. Yet this is exactly where life first emerged. The organisms thriving in the Red Sea death pools might be living windows into our planet's earliest biology, preserving metabolic pathways and survival strategies that disappeared everywhere else billions of years ago. Recent research has revealed even more disturbing details. The bacteria in these pools produce unique compounds never seen before, including potential antibiotics and enzymes that function in conditions that destroy normal proteins. Some organisms show metabolic processes that shouldn't be possible, converting toxic chemicals into energy through pathways that biochemistry says can't exist. It's as if these pools operate under different biological rules than the rest of the planet. The discovery has profound implications for astrobiology. If life can thrive in these toxic, oxygen-free environments, then similar life might exist in the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon, Europa, or Saturn's moon, Enceladus. The death pools prove that our definition of habitable is far too narrow that life can exist in conditions we considered absolutely lethal. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect is how these pools formed. They're connected to deep Earth processes we don't fully understand, possibly linked to ancient seas trapped during continental drift and concentrated over millions of years. Some researchers suggest they might be windows into vast underground oceans. We haven't discovered toxic seas that exist in Earth's crust, harboring forms of life we can't imagine. Mystery 8. The Amazon tunnel systems, prehistoric monster highways. Deep beneath the Amazon rainforest, hidden under centuries of vegetation and soil, lies a vast network of tunnels so large that modern humans can walk through them standing upright. These aren't natural caves or water-carved channels. They're smooth-walled, precisely excavated passages that stretch for hundreds of meters, intersecting and branching in patterns that suggest deliberate planning. And they were dug by creatures that haven't existed for over 10,000 years. Discovered accidentally in the 2000s when construction crews in Brazil began finding enormous voids while building roads, these tunnels have revolutionized our understanding of prehistoric South America. The walls bear distinctive marks, massive claw scratches, some over a meter long, gouged deep into solid rock. The spacing and pattern of these marks match only one thing: the claws of giant ground sloths, creatures that could stand 20 feet tall and weighed as much as modern elephants. But these weren't simple burrows. The tunnel systems show engineering sophistication that challenges our assumptions about animal intelligence. They feature multiple chambers, ventilation shafts, and drainage systems. Some tunnels are perfectly straight for hundreds of meters, others curve and branch with geometric precision. The main passages are large enough to accommodate creatures weighing 4 tons, with smaller side tunnels possibly used for young or food storage. It's architecture on a scale that no modern animal attempts. What's truly disturbing is the extent of these systems. Initially thought to be isolated discoveries, ground-penetrating radar has revealed that these tunnels exist throughout South America. Some networks extend for several kilometers, representing excavation projects that would have taken generations to complete. The amount of material moved rivals human mining operations, yet it was accomplished using only claws and primitive digging techniques. The purpose of these massive excavations remains mysterious. Giant ground sloths were herbivores that could easily survive above ground, so why invest enormous energy creating underground cities? Climate data from the period shows no extreme conditions that would force them underground. Predators existed, but nothing that seriously threatened adult giant sloths. Some researchers propose these were multi-generational family homes. Others suggest they were prehistoric highways, allowing safe movement across territories. Recent discoveries have added new dimensions to the mystery. Some tunnels show evidence of repeated use over thousands of years, with claw marks overlapping in patterns suggesting regular maintenance and expansion. Others were deliberately sealed, filled with sediment in ways that appear intentional rather than natural. Most mysteriously, some tunnel systems connect to underground water sources and caves containing prehistoric paintings, suggesting possible interaction between these giants and early humans. The implications are staggering. If giant sloths possessed the intelligence and social organization to create these massive public works, what else were prehistoric megafauna capable of? These tunnels suggest planning, cooperation, and possibly culture among creatures we've always considered simple animals. The fact that multiple species, including giant armadillos, created similar structures implies this behavior was widespread among South American megafauna. Mystery 7. Hercules Cave, the sanctuary that shouldn't exist. Perched impossibly high in the Qasr al-Abd mountains of Iraq, over 6,000 feet above sea level, accessible only through treacherous paths, that challenge modern climbers with equipment sits a cave that ancient armies somehow transformed into a fortress. The Hercules Cave defies logic not just in its location, but in its contents, sophisticated fortifications, evidence of long-term habitation, and, most mysteriously, Greek inscriptions from a time when no Greeks should have been anywhere near this remote location. The cave itself is a natural formation, but what humans did with it borders on impossible. Carved deep into the mountain's face, ancient engineers expanded the natural cavity into multiple chambers, connected by passages that required removing thousands of tons of solid rock. All this at an altitude where oxygen is thin, temperatures are extreme, and every tool and supply had to be carried up paths that would challenge pack animals. Yet someone thought this effort was worth it. The fortifications are what truly puzzle archaeologists. Defensive walls built from precisely cut stones fitted without mortar so perfectly they've survived millennia of earthquakes. Arrow slits positioned to cover every approach. Water cisterns carved from bedrock to collect and store rainfall. Storage chambers that could hold supplies for hundreds of people for months. This wasn't a temporary shelter. It was a permanent military installation in the most impractical location imaginable. Then there's the Greek inscription that gives the cave its name. This is the dwelling of Hercules. Nothing evil may enter. The text dates to the Seleucid period around 300 BCE, when Alexander's successors ruled this region. But why would Greeks inscribe a message in a remote mountain cave in Iraq? And why invoke Hercules' hero of labors in this specific location? The inscription's placement, carved deep in the cave's inner chamber, suggests it held profound significance for whoever wrote it. Archaeological evidence reveals the cave's use spans millennia. Pottery shards from the Assyrian period, weapons from the Sassanid era, Islamic coins from medieval times. Each civilization that controlled this region somehow knew about this remote cave and considered it important enough to maintain a presence there. But important for what? It's too remote for trade, too difficult to supply for military purposes, too isolated for administration. Local legends provide unsettling clues. They speak of the cave as a place where the veil between worlds is thin, where heroes communed with gods, where knowledge was hidden from unworthy eyes. Some stories claim it houses a library of metal books containing pre-flood knowledge. Others say it's a gateway to underground kingdoms inhabited by the jinn. While folklore often exaggerates the extreme effort required to develop this site, suggests it held extraordinary significance. Recent explorations have discovered sealed passages leading deeper into the mountain. Ground-penetrating radar reveals vast voids beyond the known chamber spaces that would require major excavation to access. Strange acoustic properties in certain chambers create effects that seem designed rather than natural. Some researchers report equipment malfunctions, compass anomalies, and unusual electromagnetic readings that have no clear explanation. Mini conclusion for Group 3. These three mysteries share a common theme of life and activity in places that should be impossible or pointless. The death pools where life thrives on toxicity, tunnels that required incomprehensible effort from extinct creatures, and a mountain fortress that defied practical purpose. Each represents extreme adaptation or motivation that our current understanding can't explain. What drives life to inhabit the uninhabitable? What knowledge or purpose justifies impossible efforts? These sites suggest that both ancient animals and humans possessed capabilities or knowledge that made the impossible seem necessary. They hint at a world where the boundaries between possible and impossible were drawn differently than we draw them today. What could be so important that ancient peoples would build a fortress in the clouds, or so threatening that giant creatures would hide underground? Part 3 Main Body. Group 4 Traces of Lost Civilizations. 3 Sarasuant, 3 500 words. Mystery, Mersix Lascaux. Cave, the prehistoric Sistine Chapel. In September 1940, 4 French teenagers searching for their lost dog stumbled through a hole in the ground and discovered what would revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric humanity. The Lascaux cave paintings, created 17,000 years ago, display artistic sophistication that shouldn't have existed in the Paleolithic period. These aren't crude stick figures or simple representations. They're masterpieces that rival Renaissance art in their technique, composition, and emotional power. The statistics alone are staggering. Over 600 animals painted across the cave's chambers, with some compositions containing dozens of overlapping figures, creating complex narrative scenes. The artists used the cave's natural contours to give their paintings three-dimensional depth, making horses appear to gallop across bulging rock faces and bison seem to emerge from shadows. They employed techniques like perspective shading and color gradation that art historians insist weren't invented until thousands of years later. But it's the impossible details that truly disturb archaeologists. The painters used scaffolding to reach high ceilings, leaving post holes that prove they built sophisticated wooden structures inside the cave. They created their own pigments using recipes that required chemical knowledge, mixing minerals with cave water, animal fat and blood in precise proportions to create colors that have survived 17 millennia. They even developed spray painting techniques, blowing pigment through hollow bones to create soft edges and atmospheric effects. The subjects themselves raise profound questions. While most animals depicted lived in the region, some paintings show creatures that paleontology says were extinct long before these caves were painted. Others depict animals with anatomical accuracy that suggests the artists had studied internal anatomy, possibly through dissection. Most mysteriously scattered throughout are geometric symbols and patterns that appear consistently not just in Lascaux, but in caves across Europe, suggesting a shared symbolic language across vast distances and cultures. The astronomical alignments within Lascaux are particularly unsettling. Researchers have identified star maps painted on the ceiling, accurately depicting constellations as they would have appeared 17,000 years ago. The famous Bull Hall contains what appears to be a lunar calendar tracking the moon's phases across 29 days. Some paintings align with light entering the cave on specific dates, creating illumination effects that must have been planned and calculated. Then there's the shaft scene, the most enigmatic painting in Lascaux. It depicts a bird-headed humanoid figure falling before a wounded bison with geometric symbols that some researchers interpret as shamanic transformation or even astronomical observations of a specific date. The artistic style of this scene differs completely from the naturalistic animals, suggesting either different artists or different purposes, possibly recording an actual event of supreme importance. What makes Lascaux truly impossible is that it wasn't unique. Similar caves with equally sophisticated art exist across Europe, all created within a relatively narrow time window. This wasn't isolated genius, but a widespread artistic tradition requiring training materials, techniques, and cultural transmission across thousands of miles. The logistics alone boggle the mind, organizing expeditions deep into dangerous caves, maintaining light sources for hours of detailed work, training artists in consistent styles and techniques. The preservation itself seems almost supernatural. The pigments have maintained their vibrancy for 17,000 years, surviving moisture, temperature changes, and geological shifts. When the cave was opened to tourists, human breath and body heat began destroying in decades what nature had preserved for millennia, forcing its closure in 1963. It's as if the cave was meant to preserve these messages until we were ready to find them, then seal them away again once discovered. Mystery. The 5,000-year-old wine jars. Queen Meretneith's eternal feast. In the scorching sands of Abydos, Egypt, archaeologists made a discovery that rewrote early Egyptian history. The tomb complex of Meretneith, dating to 3000 BCE, contained hundreds of perfectly sealed wine jars that had remained untouched for 5 millennia. But it wasn't just the wine that shocked researchers. It was evidence that Meret Ninth might have been Egypt's first true female pharaoh 1,000 years before Hatshepsut, and that her burial involved human sacrifice on a scale that challenges our understanding of early Egyptian civilization. The wine jars themselves are archaeological treasures. Made from pottery using techniques we can barely replicate today, they were sealed with clay stamps bearing Meret Ninth's royal seals. Inside, researchers found wine residue that had crystallized over millennia, preserving not just the chemical signature of the wine, but also pollen yeast and even DNA from the grapes. Analysis revealed these weren't local wines, but imports from the Levant, requiring trade networks far more sophisticated than Egypt supposedly possessed at this time. But the wine was for more than just the queen's afterlife refreshment. The jars were arranged in specific patterns around burial chambers containing the remains of 41 individuals, all killed simultaneously to accompany Meret Ninth into the afterlife. These weren't slaves or prisoners, but high-ranking officials, craftsmen and servants identified by their grave goods and positions. The precision of their deaths, all at the same moment, suggests a coordinated ritual suicide or execution that would have required enormous social control. The tomb's construction defies explanation for such an early period. The mud brick structure extends over an area larger than a football field, with walls still standing 30 feet high after 5,000 years. The engineering required to build such a structure without metal tools, using only copper and stone, represents knowledge that shouldn't have existed. The tomb's orientation aligns perfectly with cardinal directions and incorporates astronomical alignments that wouldn't be discovered for another 1,000 years. Inscriptions found in the tomb are equally puzzling. They're written in a proto-hieroglyphic script that predates the supposed invention of Egyptian writing. Some symbols have never been seen elsewhere and remain undeciphered. Others seem to reference events and places that don't appear in any other Egyptian records. Most mysteriously, several inscriptions appear to describe Meret Ninth not as queen or regent, but as Lady of the Two Lands, a title reserved exclusively for ruling pharaohs. Recent discoveries have revealed even more anomalies. Hidden chambers detected through ground-penetrating radar remain sealed, possibly containing the queen's actual burial chamber. Trace element analysis of the pottery reveals clay sources from across the ancient world, suggesting trade networks extending from Nubia to Mesopotamia. DNA extracted from wine residue shows genetic markers from grape varieties that don't match any known ancient or modern species. The implications are staggering. If Meret Ninth was indeed a ruling pharaoh, it means women held supreme power in Egypt far earlier than believed. The sophistication of her burial suggests the Egyptian state was far more developed in 3000 BCE than conventional history allows. The willingness of 41 people to die for their queen indicates a level of religious conviction or social control that seems impossible for such an early period. Mystery. The Canaanite Arch, the monument they buried on purpose. In the hills of northern Israel, archaeologists uncovered something that makes no sense: a massive ceremonial archway built by the Canaanites around 1750 BCE, used for perhaps a generation, then deliberately and carefully buried as if to hide it from the world. This wasn't destruction by enemies or abandonment due to disaster. This was the intentional concealment of a monumental achievement by the very people who created it. The arch itself is an engineering marvel that shouldn't exist in the Bronze Age. Standing originally 30 feet high and 20 feet wide, it was constructed using a true arch technique that historians insist wasn't invented until the Romans over 1,000 years later. The precision of the stonework, with blocks weighing several tons, fitted without mortar so perfectly that a knife blade can't fit between them, rivals anything built by later civilizations. But it's what archaeologists found sealed behind the arch that truly disturbs. A vast underground complex extending deep into the hillside, with chambers connected by corridors that show advanced acoustic properties. When specific tones are produced in certain chambers, the entire complex resonates, creating frequencies that can be felt in your bones. Some chambers amplify whispers into booming voices, others swallow sound completely. It's acoustic engineering that we're only beginning to understand today. The ritual objects found within are unprecedented for Canaanite culture. A massive bronze bowl cast in a single piece using techniques we can't replicate, even now decorated with symbols that appear nowhere else in Canaanite art. Thousands of animal bones, all from the same mass sacrifice, arranged in patterns that seem to encode information we can't decipher. Most disturbingly, evidence of child sacrifice on a scale that dwarfs anything previously discovered, with remains showing they all died within hours of each other. The deliberate burial of the site is what truly puzzles researchers. The Canaanites spent enormous effort filling every chamber with specially selected sand and clay, sealing doorways with precisely cut stones, then burying the entire complex under thousands of tons of earth arranged in layers that would preserve the structure while hiding it completely. They even planted specific trees above it, whose root systems would stabilize the covering earth without penetrating to the chambers below. Inscriptions found on the sealed doors, translated only recently, speak of closing the gate and silencing the voices from below. They reference a covenant, broken gods, angered, and knowledge that must be hidden until the stars return to their beginning. One inscription seems to be a warning: "Let no son of man open what the fathers have sealed, lest the earth swallow the living as it swallowed the dead." Recent technological surveys have revealed the site is even larger than initially thought. Magnetometry shows a network of tunnels extending under the entire hill, possibly connecting to natural cave systems that go even deeper. Some researchers report equipment malfunctions near certain sealed chambers, with electronic devices failing and compass needles spinning wildly. Local seismic sensors have detected regular rhythmic vibrations from deep below the site that don't match any known geological phenomenon. Mystery Theta 3: Antarctica's hidden military bases. The frozen conspiracy. Beneath miles of Antarctic ice lies evidence of the most audacious military conspiracy in human history. Multiple whistleblowers, including military personnel and civilian contractors, have independently described vast underground facilities that officially don't exist. These aren't research stations, but military installations, conducting experiments that violate every international treaty using technology that shouldn't exist, investigating discoveries that rewrite human history. The story begins with Operation High Jump in 1946, when Admiral Richard Byrd led 4,000 military personnel and 13 ships to Antarctica for what was officially described as a training exercise. The operation was supposed to last 8 months, but was abruptly terminated after just 2 months. Byrd later stated in a Chilean newspaper interview that America needed to prepare defenses against enemy fighters that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. The interview was never reprinted in English, and Byrd never elaborated on this warning. Recent testimony from supposed facility insiders describes installations that dwarf anything publicly acknowledged. Multi-level underground cities carved from rock and ice, powered by geothermal energy and possibly zero-point energy systems. Magnetic levitation transport systems connecting facilities across thousands of miles. Laboratories containing biological specimens that predate known life on Earth. Most incredibly, claims of recovered technology from a flash-frozen civilization discovered under the ice, including craft and devices that operate on principles physics hasn't acknowledged. The discovery of vast liquid water lakes under the Antarctic ice sheet has added credibility to these claims. Lake Vostok, buried under 2 miles of ice, has been isolated from the surface for potentially millions of years. When Russian scientists finally breached it, they reported findings so sensitive that all data was immediately classified. Unconfirmed reports speak of biological samples unlike anything in known taxonomy, with DNA structures that suggest either extreme antiquity or non-terrestrial origin. Satellite imagery, before being scrubbed from public databases, showed anomalies that support these claims. Perfectly rectangular icebergs that observers claim are camouflaged facility entrances. Heat signatures from areas that should be frozen solid. Aircraft tracks leading to regions where no acknowledged bases exist. Most mysteriously, areas of Antarctica that are pixelated or blurred in every public satellite image regardless of the source or date. The testimony of Corey Goode and others describes even more incredible discoveries. A pre-Adamite civilization, they claim, existed in Antarctica when it was ice-free, possessing technology that makes our current capabilities look primitive. These beings, described as elongated skulled humanoids, allegedly created the bloodlines that would become Earth's elite ruling classes. Their preserved bodies, flash-frozen in catastrophe, supposedly contain DNA that's being studied and potentially integrated into secret genetic programs. Mini-conclusion for Group 4. These 4 discoveries share a pattern of advanced knowledge appearing where it shouldn't exist, then being deliberately hidden or lost. Cave painters with Renaissance techniques in the Stone Age. Egyptian queens buried with wine and servants in monuments that shouldn't have been possible to build. Canaanites creating then burying architectural marvels. Hidden bases studying frozen evidence of impossible civilizations. Each suggests that human history includes chapters of advancement and knowledge that have been erased, hidden, or forgotten. The deliberate concealment in several cases implies this knowledge was considered dangerous. What did our ancestors know that they felt compelled to hide? What discoveries in Antarctica are considered so sensitive that their very existence must be denied? Are we rediscovering knowledge that was intentionally buried? And if so, should we heed the warnings of those who hid it? Part 3. Main Body. Group 5. Secrets Behind Power. 2500, 3000 Azra's Words. Mystery. Number 2. Pope Sylvester II. The sorcerer who ruled Christianity. In the year 999, a French peasant named Gerbert of Aurillac ascended to the papal throne as Sylvester II, becoming the most controversial pope in Vatican history. His rise from obscurity to ultimate religious power involved knowledge so advanced it could only be explained as sorcery, and allegations of a demonic pact that the Church has never fully denied. 8 centuries before the scientific revolution, this pope possessed mathematical and astronomical knowledge that wouldn't be discovered by European science for centuries. Gerbert's early life reads like a cult fiction. As a young monk, he traveled to Islamic Spain, disappearing for 3 years into Moorish territories where Christians faced death. He emerged with knowledge that stunned medieval Europe. Arabic numerals, the decimal system, complex astronomical calculations and designs for mechanical devices that seemed to violate the laws of nature. He built a hydraulic organ that played itself astronomical clocks that predicted eclipses with perfect accuracy, and most mysteriously, a bronze head that allegedly answered yes or no questions about the future with uncanny accuracy. The bronze head, described in multiple independent accounts, remains one of history's most puzzling artifacts. Witnesses, including church officials and nobles, swore the head would answer complex questions, its responses proving accurate even years later. William of Malmesbury, a respected historian, wrote that the head was fashioned under certain stellar configurations and could reveal things past, present, and future. When Sylvester died, church authorities immediately destroyed the head, claiming it was an abomination, but not before recording that it had predicted the exact date and circumstances of Sylvester's death. Contemporary accounts describe impossible feats. Sylvester could calculate square roots of large numbers instantly in his head. He predicted solar eclipses to the minute years in advance. He designed a system of gears that could compute astronomical positions mechanically, essentially creating an analog computer 800 years before Babbage. His mathematical treatises contained formulas that wouldn't be independently derived until the Renaissance. How did a 10th century monk acquire knowledge that Europe wouldn't develop for centuries? The most disturbing allegations involve his relationship with an entity called Meridiana, Multiple sources, including church documents that survived various purges, describe Meridiana as a succubus or female demon who provided Sylvester with knowledge in exchange for his soul. These aren't Protestant propaganda from centuries later. These are contemporary Catholic sources, including testimonies from clergy who knew Sylvester personally. They describe finding him in animated conversation with invisible presences, performing calculations that filled rooms with numerical symbols that would appear in the air, like glowing script. The legend of the dice game with Satan appears in dozens of medieval manuscripts. Sylvester allegedly wagered his soul against the papal throne using dice that could calculate probabilities beyond human comprehension. He won, becoming pope, but at the cost documented in his final confession. On his deathbed, Sylvester allegedly ordered his body cut to pieces and scattered, saying his corpse didn't deserve Christian burial. The church refused burying him in the Lateran, where his tomb allegedly sweats before the death of each pope, a phenomenon documented into the 20th century. Vatican's secret archives, partially opened in recent years, reveal the church took these allegations seriously. Multiple investigations were conducted, including exhumations of Sylvester's remains. In 1648, his tomb was opened, and investigators found his body intact, not decomposed with mechanisms they couldn't identify. The tomb was immediately resealed, and detailed documentation was restricted to the highest levels of Vatican authority. What makes Sylvester's story truly unsettling is how his impossible knowledge proved accurate. His astronomical calculations, preserved in various monasteries, have been verified by modern computers as precisely correct. His mathematical proofs, considered demonic in his time, are now taught in universities. Either Sylvester had access to knowledge sources we haven't identified, or human intellectual potential includes capabilities we've forgotten how to access. Mystery number 1. The Book of Esther, the text that terrified Hitler. Among all the books Adolf Hitler banned and burned, one stood apart in the fear it inspired in the Nazi leader, the Book of Esther. This biblical text so terrified Hitler that he ordered it completely eradicated from Nazi-controlled territories, with possession punishable by death. SS units were given special orders to confiscate and destroy every copy, even those in museum collections. What was it about this ancient Jewish text that the most powerful dictator in Europe feared more than armies? The Book of Esther tells of a Jewish woman who becomes queen of Persia and prevents a genocide of her people, turning the tables on their would-be executioner. But it's the book's unique characteristics that make it extraordinary. It's the only book in the Hebrew Bible that never mentions God, not once. It describes Jews successfully defending themselves through human action alone, without divine intervention. It establishes Purim, a festival celebrating Jewish survival through cleverness and courage rather than miracles. Hitler's fear of the book was documented by his inner circle. Hermann Rauschning reported that Hitler called it the most dangerous book ever written and claimed it contained the secret of Jewish immortality. Joseph Goebbels' diary mentions Hitler's rage when discovering copies had survived various purges, leading to increasingly harsh measures. Heinrich Himmler created a special SS unit tasked solely with finding and destroying copies of Esther, even searching ancient monasteries and private collections. What specifically terrified Hitler becomes clear when examining the text through Nazi eyes. The villain, Haman, seeks to exterminate all Jews in the Persian Empire through official decree, using arguments eerily similar to Nazi propaganda. Jews don't assimilate, they follow different laws, they threaten national unity. Haman even offers to pay for the extermination, calculating the financial benefit of confiscating Jewish property. The parallels to the Nazi final solution were so exact that Hitler reportedly believed Jews had prophetic knowledge and were using the book as a blueprint for survival. But there's a deeper layer that historians have only recently understood. The Book of Esther contains coded patterns that Jewish mystics claim reveal hidden knowledge. The text's mathematical structure, when analyzed through gematria and other Kabbalistic methods, allegedly contains information about future events. Some researchers claim to have found references to the Holocaust itself encoded in the original Hebrew, including dates and names that wouldn't exist for millennia. The book's survival instructions proved remarkably effective. It teaches Jews to hide their identity when necessary, to gain positions of influence, to maintain secret networks, and to strike back when the moment is right. These strategies, preserved for 2,500 years, were exactly what enabled many Jews to survive the Holocaust. Hidden Jews in government positions leaked information. Secret networks smuggled refugees. And ultimately, like in the original story, the would-be destroyers were destroyed. Recently declassified documents reveal Hitler's obsession went beyond mere book burning. He ordered archaeological expeditions to find the historical Persian records that might corroborate or explain the Esther story. He believed the book contained practical magic, actual techniques for survival and revenge that Jews had successfully used throughout history. SS Occult Research Unit studied the text for hidden powers, believing it might contain formulas for controlling fate itself. Mystery d'Australie. Antarctica's pre-Adamite civilization, the ultimate cover-up. The most explosive claims about Antarctica don't involve just military bases, but evidence of an entire pre-human civilization, flash-frozen in a catastrophe that reshaped Earth. According to multiple whistleblowers, including aerospace insiders and military personnel, discoveries beneath the Antarctic ice include preserved cities, advanced technology, and elongated skull humanoids that predate any known human civilization by millions of years. The discoveries allegedly began in the 1950s, when military exercises revealed anomalous magnetic readings suggesting massive metallic structures under the ice. Ground-penetrating radar revealed geometric patterns, too regular to be natural, vast rectangular structures, pyramids larger than Giza, and what appeared to be a sprawling metropolis, preserved in ice 2 miles thick. Initial expeditions found entrance points leading to chambers containing technology that defied explanation. According to leaked testimonies, exploration teams discovered bodies of beings standing 12 to 14 feet tall with elongated skulls, preserved so perfectly that cell structures remained intact. DNA analysis allegedly revealed these beings were related to but distinct from Homo sapiens, with genetic markers suggesting they were either our predecessors or a parallel evolutionary branch. Some bodies were found in stasis chambers that still showed signs of minimal power, as if waiting to be revived. The technology discovered supposedly includes propulsion systems using room-temperature superconductors, energy sources that tap zero-point fields, and navigation systems that work through dimensions rather than space. Written records in scripts that combine elements of ancient Sanskrit, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and unknown symbols describe Earth's history in terms that contradict everything in our textbooks. They speak of cycles of civilization, periodic catastrophes, and interventions by off-world visitors. Most disturbing are claims about active facilities. Some sections of these underground cities allegedly maintain atmosphere and temperature through unknown means. Automated systems continue to function after millions of years. Certain areas emit energy fields that affect human consciousness, with exploration team members reporting shared visions, sudden knowledge downloads, and psychological changes that persist after leaving Antarctica. The international response has been unprecedented. The Antarctic Treaty, signed at the height of the Cold War when enemies agreed on nothing, suddenly united every major power in keeping Antarctica off-limits to civilian exploration. Military presence has steadily increased despite official claims of scientific research. Massive cargo aircraft conduct supply runs to areas where no acknowledged bases exist. Nuclear-powered boring machines designed for tunnel construction have been tracked to Antarctic deployment. Corey Goode and others claim that elite bloodlines have known about these discoveries for decades, using recovered technology to advance their own power while keeping humanity ignorant. They describe secret agreements between governments and surviving pre-Adamites treaties that exchange technology for resources and genetic material. Some claim that disclosure is being prepared gradually, with recent military UFO confirmations being the first phase of revealing the truth about humanity's hidden history. Final conclusion. These 15 mysteries we've explored tonight aren't isolated anomalies or comfortable curiosities to ponder from the safety of our modern worldview. They're cracks in the facade of consensus reality, glimpses of a hidden history that suggests everything we've been taught about human civilization, our capabilities, and our place in the cosmos might be carefully constructed fiction. From vanished civilizations that achieved the impossible before disappearing overnight, to technologies that existed before their inventors were born, to creatures and environments that operated outside known biological laws, to traces of advancement deliberately hidden or destroyed, to the secrets that power structures kill to protect, these mysteries form a pattern too consistent to ignore. What's most disturbing isn't any single discovery, but their collective implication that human history is cyclical rather than linear, that advanced knowledge has been gained and lost multiple times, that we may not be the first intelligent species on Earth, or even the most advanced, and that powerful groups have always known truths they've hidden from humanity. The question isn't whether our history is wrong, but how wrong it is, and more importantly, why the truth has been hidden. Are we being protected from knowledge that would shatter society? Are we being controlled by those who monopolize hidden truths? Or are we simply rediscovering realities that each civilization must find for itself before the next reset erases the slate clean? As you go about your life, remember that beneath your feet may lie tunnels carved by giants above your head. Stars arranged in patterns that encode messages from the past, and all around you, carefully hidden in plain sight, evidence that consensus reality is just one possible interpretation of the impossible world we inhabit. What do you think are these mysteries? Evidence of a hidden history we're not supposed to know? Which of these 15 discoveries disturbs you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the rabbit hole goes deeper than we've shown you tonight. The truth isn't just out there, it's been here all along, waiting for those brave enough to see it. Until next time, keep questioning everything. Part 4. Cross Connections and Unifying Patterns. 600-800 words. As we step back from these 15 individual mysteries, a disturbing pattern emerges that's far more unsettling than any single discovery. These aren't random anomalies scattered across time and geography. They're connected by threads that weave a tapestry of hidden history, suggesting that what we call mysterious or impossible might actually be glimpses of a standard operating procedure we've forgotten. Consider the recurring theme of sudden disappearance. Cahokia, the Anasazi, the Paracas culture all vanished at the height of their power, often within a single generation. But notice the timing. Many of these disappearances cluster around certain periods, particularly the 13th or 14th centuries CE and around 10,000 BCE. These aren't random dates. They correspond to documented climate catastrophes, magnetic pole shifts, and impact events that mainstream science acknowledges but doesn't connect to cultural disappearances. The impossible technologies we've examined share disturbing commonalities. The Russian nanostructures, the medicine wheel's astronomical precision, the acoustic engineering of the Canaanite arch, and the mechanical knowledge of Pope Sylvester all suggest understanding of principles we're only rediscovering. But more unnervingly, they appear to represent different applications of the same underlying science, one that unifies consciousness, energy, and matter in ways our compartmentalized physics hasn't achieved. The elongated skulls appear everywhere in the Paracas, remains in the Antarctic pre-Adamites, even in ancient Egyptian royalty if you know where to look. This isn't cultural deformation. It's a biological marker that appears globally, suggesting either a widespread non-human influence or evidence that human genetics includes chapters we've deliberately erased. The fact that Hitler feared the Book of Esther's survival knowledge while simultaneously searching for Antarctic pre-Adamite technology suggests he understood connections we're only beginning to glimpse. The pattern of deliberate concealment is perhaps most revealing. The Canaanite arch was purposefully buried, the Lascaux cave preserved then sealed, Antarctic discoveries immediately classified, the Vatican destroying Sylvester's bronze head while preserving records of its existence. This isn't random loss, but orchestrated suppression, suggesting that throughout history, those who've discovered certain truths have decided humanity wasn't ready for them, or perhaps that the knowledge itself was too dangerous to preserve. The underground theme connects multiple mysteries. Amazon tunnels carved by giants, death pools in ocean depths, the Hercules cave's impossible elevation, Antarctic bases beneath miles of ice, Canaanite chambers extending into the earth. It's as if there's an entire hidden geography, a world beneath the world where different rules apply and different histories are preserved. Ancient texts repeatedly describe underground kingdoms from Agartha to Xibalba, which archaeology dismisses as myth, while simultaneously discovering vast tunnel systems that match the descriptions. The astronomical knowledge encoded in these mysteries is too consistent to ignore. The medicine wheel Lascaux, star maps Cahokia's wood henges, and the alignments of Egyptian tombs all demonstrate understanding of cosmic cycles that span millennia. They're tracking something, waiting for something, or marking time until something returns. The precision suggests this isn't primitive sky worship, but sophisticated observation of cycles that affect Earth in ways we haven't recognized. Perhaps most disturbing is how these mysteries cluster around certain geographical nodes. The 33rd parallel north, where many of these discoveries concentrate, has been called the most mysterious latitude on Earth. Electromagnetic anomalies. Unusual geology and repeated historical significance suggest certain locations on Earth are special, serving as interfaces between our normal reality and something else. These might be natural stargates, consciousness amplifiers, or simply places where the veil between dimensions is thinner. The biological anomalies, from the death pool's impossible life to preserved pre-Adamite bodies, suggest life on Earth includes forms and capabilities outside our taxonomic understanding. The wine preserved for 5,000 years, the giant sloths engineering underground cities, the organisms thriving in toxic pools all point to biological possibilities we've excluded from our definition of life. What if Earth hosts multiple biospheres, some hidden, some extinct, some waiting? The knowledge preservation methods revealed in these mysteries are remarkably similar. Information encoded in stone arrangements, preserved in crystallized wine carved in cave walls, hidden in biblical texts, frozen in Antarctic ice. It's as if multiple cultures independently discovered that certain methods could preserve information across catastrophic resets, ensuring knowledge would survive even if civilizations didn't. These connections suggest we're not looking at mysteries, but at evidence of a pattern, a cycle, perhaps even a schedule. Civilizations rise, discover certain truths, face something that causes them to disappear or hide their knowledge, and the cycle begins again. We're not the first to walk this path, and if the pattern holds, we won't be the last. The question becomes, are we approaching another reset point? And if so, will we be the civilization that finally breaks the cycle, or will future archaeologists puzzle over our mysteriously abandoned cities, wondering why we too vanished at the height of our power? Part 5 conclusion, 600 to 800 words. Here we stand at the edge of an abyss of understanding, having glimpsed 15 cracks in the facade of accepted history. But these aren't just stories to entertain or mysteries to ponder. They're warnings, messages, and perhaps instructions from civilizations that walked this path before us, discovered truths that shattered their worldview and either transcended or were destroyed by what they found. The implications of what we've explored tonight ripple out in waves that threaten to capsize everything we thought we knew. If even one of these mysteries is what it appears to be, then human history needs complete revision. If several are connected as the patterns suggest, then we're living in a reality so different from what we've been taught that the term awakening isn't metaphorical, but literal. We're told that progress is linear, that we're the pinnacle of human achievement, that our ancestors were primitive and superstitious. But what if we're actually in a dark age of forgetting? What if the knowledge encoded in the medicine wheel painted in Lascaux or buried with Queen Mary IX represents heights we haven't reached, but are only beginning to rediscover? What if our smartphones and satellites are primitive compared to consciousness technologies that previous civilizations mastered? The forces arrayed against revealing these truths are formidable. Academic careers are destroyed for pursuing forbidden archaeology. Military classifications hide Antarctic discoveries. Religious institutions guard ancient secrets. Corporate interests suppress technologies that might upset power structures. Media ridicules and dismisses evidence that challenges consensus reality. The question isn't whether there's a cover-up, but how many layers deep it goes, and whether those perpetrating it believe they're protecting us or controlling us. But something is changing. The internet has democratized information in ways that make total suppression impossible. Independent researchers with advanced technology can investigate sites previously accessible only to institutions. Whistleblowers are revealing classified programs. DNA analysis and quantum archaeology are unlocking secrets that were meant to stay buried. The truth isn't just wanting to be free. It's becoming impossible to contain. As we face our own civilization's challenges, from climate change to potential extinction events, these ancient mysteries become urgently relevant. Did the Anasazi see the signs of their coming disappearance? Did Cahokia's residents have warning of whatever caused them to abandon their metropolis? Did the Paracas culture know their genetic line would end? The patterns suggest that civilizations receive warnings but rarely heed them, perhaps, because the truth is too disturbing to accept until it's too late. The death pools of the Red Sea remind us that life finds ways to exist in impossible conditions. The Amazon tunnels prove that beings we consider primitive were capable of achievements we can't replicate. The Canaanite Arch warns that some knowledge is considered too dangerous to preserve. Antarctica whispers that we're not the first advanced species on Earth and might not be the last. Each mystery is both a piece of evidence and a piece of advice for navigating what's coming. So what do we do with this knowledge? First, we question everything. Every historical assumption, every scientific dogma, every religious teaching should be examined through the lens of these mysteries. Second, we prepare for revelations that might fundamentally alter our understanding of reality. The disclosure of hidden truths isn't a possibility, but an inevitability. The only question is whether it happens gradually or catastrophically. Finally, we must decide whether we're going to be the generation that finally breaks the cycle. Will we be the ones who integrate hidden knowledge rather than suppressing it? Will we achieve what past civilizations couldn't, sustainable advancement that doesn't end in disappearance or reset? Or will future archaeologists puzzle over our ruins, wondering why a civilization with such promise vanished just as it began to rediscover the truth? The 15 mysteries we've explored tonight are more than archaeological anomalies or historical curiosities. They're pieces of a vast puzzle that, when assembled, reveals a picture of reality far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more dangerous than we ever imagined. They tell us that impossible is just another word for forgotten, that mystery is another word for suppressed knowledge, and that the truth about human history and potential is far greater than any fiction we could create. As you return to your daily life, remember that you're walking on layers of hidden history, breathing air that's witnessed civilizations rise and fall, living in a reality where the impossible happens so regularly we've stopped noticing. The question isn't whether these mysteries are real, but whether you're ready to accept what they reveal about the nature of reality itself. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the impossible. Share your thoughts below. Which mystery disturbed you most? What connections did you see that we missed? And most importantly, are you ready for the truth that's been hidden beneath our feet all along? Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this video with others ready to question everything. Because the next time we meet, we'll dive even deeper into the impossible truths that shape our hidden history. Until then, keep your eyes open, your mind questioning, and remember, the greatest mystery isn't what we don't know, but why we weren't meant to know it. The truth is out there, in here, and everywhere in between. The question is, are you ready to see it?